I'm Scientific Illustrator Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Create's Red Panda step-by-step painting instructional video. In this video I'll be showing you how to paint the Red Panda by using Nature Sketch Create's step-by-step painting instructions. Help this tiny business by clicking that like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and checking out future lesson creates at naturesketchcreate.com. First, collect all your materials and make sure they're ready to go. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, relax, and don't worry too much if you think you might have made a mistake. Let's get started. Step 1, transfer the image to the watercolor paper. So first, go ahead and tape the transfer image to the back of the watercolor paper. Make sure you don't cover up any of the lines you plan on transferring. Take your graphite transfer paper, dark side down, light side up. Place that in between your watercolor paper and your transfer image. Gently press it down, and we're not going to transfer this dark fill area. We're just going to transfer the outline of those rings. And once you've transferred line, you want to go ahead and check to make sure it is transferring and that it's dark enough. So looks like it's dark enough. We want to be able to see that at the end so that we can redraw those lines with our micron pens. So you can go ahead and go throughout and transfer all those lines by tracing over them. And you don't have to worry about being exact. This is just a sketch. Take your time, relax. This is meant to be meditative. So put on some music, a podcast, some audiobook, or listen to nature as you trace over these lines to transfer them outside. If you're having a hard time telling which lines you transfer because you tend to not blend in with the transfer image, you can always use a ballpoint pen or Rozo's sharp tip pencil. Go ahead and go through that, and trace over all those lines to transfer them. When you think you have all the lines transferred, go ahead and flip the image up and down while holding it gently on a corner. And I always find I miss quite a few different lines. So go through and start to add those. And when I'm flipping, I move my eye from one side to the other to just kind of see what I missed. So go ahead and remove the graphite transfer paper. You can use several times, so I'll save that for later. And I'll remove the tape from the back of the watercolor paper, and then I'll remove the tape from the transfer image. It came off without much or any white from the paper, so I'll save that for use for later. And then I'll save this transfer image just in case I need it to protect my image while I'm painting it. Take my kneaded eraser, and I want to knead it to a light gray spot. this is much gentler on the paper than a normal eraser. And if you use a normal eraser on this paper, it'll make it so that the watercolor is not going to behave the way you want it to. But this preserves the consistency and texture of this paper. You can lighten some lines by just kind of dabbing over them, or you can erase smudge marks by just kind of rubbing your needed eraser over it. And my eye on there looks a little weird, so I'll just keep that in mind and change it when I add the ink lines and the paint. So now I'm ready to move on to step 2. Step 2, paint in the Panda rust and carmine. So first you want to mix the Panda rust. Take 3 drops of the 1H Hansa Yellow Light. Make sure to shake these paints before you use them. Sometimes the paint pigment settles on the sides and you'll want to try to get the full concentration of that color. 1, 2, 3. Two drops of the 10H Venetian Brown. 1, 2. Give myself a little space for my hand. And 1 drop of the 28H Carmine. I'm going to go ahead and mix that up. I'm going to release just a little bit of water from my water brush by gently pressing on this barrel. If you have a regular paintbrush, just add a tiny bit of water to your watercolor in your palette. Mix that up. Dab it off onto your towel and test it out on your paper. Looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and dab a lot of that off onto my towel and then just add water to the side. And again, I'm adding water by just gently pressing on my water brush. Dab it off on my towel and check it out again. Looks like the right color. Really light and wet in our palette makes the color water added, makes the color lighter, whereas the drier, darker, or more pigment, less water added in our palette makes the color a little bit darker. So I picked up more paint, and then I'm going to just go ahead and add this to the head, body, and tail, like you see in step 2's image, and the bottom 3/4 of the eyes. And again, my eye lines didn't turn out quite right on this eye here, so, or even on this one, a little bit off. And that's just fine. It's going to be perfectly imperfect. And I can adjust that a little bit with my Micron ink pens. And I'm going to avoid the ears, of course, the muzzle area, and the nose, and this area here, these white areas above the eyes and these white patches on the face. If you have a little bit too much paint, it just seems a little too concentrated, you can always lighten it up a little bit. Every time I paint, it turns out just a little bit different. Depends on my mood, how the paint's behaving. Conversely, if your paint starts to run low, go ahead and pick up a little bit more paint and add it. And if you get something in a spot you shouldn't have it, it's fine. Go ahead and clean up your brush and just kind of pull that paint up. Or even use your finger to kind of smudge it to the side. Perfectly imperfect. When I'm painting, I paint in sections, and I'm just adding it like I would with a marker or a crayon, just kind of filling in the space. The thing is, if you run out of watercolor pigment, you'll need to pick up a little bit more, dab it off on your towel before reapplying. Dabbing it on your towel, make sure you don't add too much water to the paper itself. If you add too much water, it will end up buckling, and you don't really want that. It also makes it so you can't control the paint as much, and it increases the dry time. And since this is a sketch, we're just wanting to do it quick, so we have less water added to the paper itself. Next, we'll go ahead and mix the Panda Carmine. Take 1 drop of the 28H Carmine. And I don't want too much of this because I just want a really light, wet color. I'm going to use something with a lot of water, a lot less pigment, so it's wet and light when we use it. Dab it off on my towel, check it out. Wait, just a tiny bit more pigment. That might have even been too much. Dab on my towel, check it out again. That looks pretty good. And I'm just going to add it in the mouth area here, avoiding the teeth. Clean off my brush, let this completely dry, and move on to step 3. Step 3, paint in the Panda Rust and Sepia. So first, go ahead and pick up some of that Panda Rust. I'm going to use the drier, darker color. I want to make sure it moves well. It maybe needs a little bit more water added to it. If it feels like it's kind of getting stuck on the paper, just add a tiny bit of water and try it again. It should flow pretty nice. Still feels like it's getting stuck, so add a little bit more. I want to add the water slowly because it's hard to take the water away. It's easy to add it. That feels like it's flowing better to me. And I'm going to go ahead and add that like I see in step 3's image, and add it to this bottom 3/4 of the eye, some parts of here on the face, and the body, and the tail. And when you add it to the body and the tail, just make sure to start with the dark areas first and then kind of work into those lighter areas. And you can dab your brush off if you need to at any time to lighten the paint. I'm going to start with this tail. I'm going to add the paint in. And then I'm going to clean my brush and then use the clean damp brush to kind of move some of that paint into that first tail ring. And that'll add a little bit of a gradient, very subtle gradient. So darker here and lighter here. And watercolor is going to do a little bit of whatever it wants to do. So it'll create some different textures in there as well, which is great, makes it just perfectly imperfect. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that paint. For the tail rings, I'm just going to go ahead and add that paint in. If you need a finer tip, just roll your tip on your towel. And you don't have to be real exact with this because these lines are straight, but the tail of the red panda is very bushy, so you don't have to be straight when you're putting these in. They can be a little out of the lines. Even look good when you get kind of messy in there. So have fun making that a little messy. I'll pick up a little more paint, and I'm going to start in the dark areas of the face here. That's a little darker on the bottom of the face, so start there. I have these lines to help me figure out where I should put the paint. But I also have an image in step 3 and my final reference image as well. And it does not need to be exact again. And if it's a little darker, that's fine. Or if it's a little lighter, get any paint outside of the lines, don't worry too much. It's just a sketch, it's gonna be great. Add to the bottom 3/4 of the eye here. Pick up some more and dab it off onto my towel and add it in. I think this is pretty much dry, so I don't have to worry about rubbing my hand over it too much and smudging my paint. So I'll go ahead and paint the body. Usually I work on my paintings left to right since I'm right-handed, so I don't smudge my paint. Might be something that helps you. I'm just going to start in these darker areas. And I'm filling it in, not worrying too much about being exact, just getting it in the area and concentrating on one space at a time. If you want to avoid lines from your paint when it dries, just make sure to kind of keep it wet. The longer it sits there without you doing anything to it, the more of a line it'll create. And you can stop at some of these natural lines that are already in our painting, or paint within them too, to make that a little easier. When you have all of that paint added, go ahead and clean off your brush and then mix the Panda sepia. Take 1 drop of 21H sepia and we're going to use the really wet light version of this color again, so it has a lot of water added to it in our palette so that when we use it to paint it's going to have less pigment and appear really light. So I'm going to dab it off onto my towel, test it out on my test paper. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to add it to these ears. It doesn't need to be exact. You can make this your own. Add it to the nose. little eye outline. And just the base of the nails here, just a little bit. To give those nails a little bit of color. I'm going to clean off my brush, let this dry, and move on to step 4. Step 4, paint in the Panda Red Brown. So first you want to mix the Panda Red Brown by taking 3 drops of the 1H Rozzo Yellow Light. 1, 2, 3. 1 drop of the 28H Carmine. 2 drops of the 10H Venetian Brown. And 1 drop of the 21H Sepia. Mix that up, add a little bit of water to it, and your palette, and then dab it off on your towel and test it out on your test paper. Looks like the right color to me. And I'm going to use the full concentration of this color. I'm going to add it to all of the dark areas as you see in step 4's image, and add it in the head first. And then I'm going to add it to the body. Starting in these darker areas and kind of letting the paint run out a little bit. Always dab it onto your towel to reduce the amount of paint in your paintbrush. And then continue to paint a slightly lighter color. I'm painting this section by section here. Give myself a little bit more control. Well, it's still wet, you can add a little bit more paint. So that was a little too light. Got pretty light when I was painting. And the paint pigment ran out of my brush. So add a little bit more in there. Well, in this area here. I'm going to take a little bit and add it to the tip of the tail again. And now I'm ready to move on to step 5. Step 5, paint in the Panda Brown and Carmine. Now, I did get a little bit of paint over here which spattered onto my paper somehow, and that's totally fine. It's perfectly imperfect. That might be a place where you'd want to keep the painting protected by a piece of paper. I like the little character it adds to it, something I wouldn't have put in otherwise. And this is just a sketch, just a practice. So I'm going to go ahead and mix the Panda Brown, take 3 drops of the Rozzo Yellow Light, 2, 3, 1 drop of the 28H Carmine, 2 drops of the Venetian Brown, and 3 drops of the Sepia. go ahead and mix that up, adding just a little bit of water from my water brush. Test it out on my paper. Looks good. And then I'm going to add it the same way, similar places that I added the paint in step 4, the red-brown color. And I'm going to refer to step 5's image as far as where to put that paint. And you can also look at your final reference image to help you with that a little bit. Let's go ahead and add it in. So that head area and the body. And letting the paint kind of run out from your brush. Dabbing it off if you need to move the paint into a lighter area. Working one section at a time. And not being too exact at all, just kind of adding it in. It's meant to be fun and relaxing. Don't worry too much about getting anything exact, just kind of add it in. Some basic space, similar color, won't be the same, and that's great because it creates something unique to you. And do the same thing I did with the tail again, adding a little bit of paint tip of the tail, and then kind of moving it around after cleaning off my brush. Create a gradient. I didn't add too much. I didn't want the tail to be too terribly dark. And this paint goes a long way, as you can see. Just added a little bit. Letting that paint land wherever it feels like landing. Then I'm going to take this same paint and dab it out, pick some up, dab it off on my towel, and then add it to the side here. Test it out on my paper. It looks pretty good. I'm just going to add it to this little space between the teeth and the chin. Darken that up a little bit. Clean off my brush. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the carmine. Now I have this light color. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the dark and then add it to that light color again, because I don't want it to be really dark. I don't want it to be really light. That looks maybe just a little bit more. Now it has a little bit too much. Color mixing can take a little time, even if the formula is there to use. There we go. I think that looks probably a little too light now. A little bit more. I like that now. And dab it off on my towel, and then I'm just going to add it to the top part of the mouth, right below the nose there. I'm going to go ahead and clean off my brush, let this dry, and move on to step 6. Step 6, paint in the panda rust. So I'm going to add a little bit of the panda rust color to just kind of deepen that color throughout. So you can look at your final reference image or step 6 image to figure out where to place that, and just kind of add it in. Just kind of darken it up a little bit, dabbing off onto your towel before applying the paint. Make sure to make those eyes big and round so they're really cute. Add it into the tail. Again, just deepening some areas, not being exact about the placement, just kind of adding a little bit more in there. Get real creative with how fluffy you make the tail rings. Kind of scribble that in. And just a little bit more to the tip too. Brighten it up a little bit. And then I'm going to take the lighter color. Make sure that it's light, and add it to these other areas, like these lighter areas here. Deepen them up a bit. It's a little too light. Get a little more vibrant. A little bit in the tail as well. These rings here. You may want to wait till your paint dries, but it's okay. If you want to go ahead and add it now. Kind of add a little bit more red to that. I feel like making it really red today. Like I said, every time I paint it's a little different. I have it lighter on the bottom, a little more red on the inside and on the top. And you can keep adding a little bit more paint while it's still wet. And it'll just go in those areas that you're already painting. Do be careful, it'll give you a different effect if this tail rings are wet from the previous color. So just kind of blend together. And I'm going to go ahead and dab off my paintbrush, let this dry, and move on to step 7. Step 7, add ink lines. So you want to go ahead and use the smallest tip micron, the black pigment micron 005. And as the smallest tip, I'm going to use that to redraw and redefine the lines transferred in step 1. So you can refer to 7A or your final reference image for placement. And go ahead and redraw those lines, and don't redraw the tail ring lines. And don't draw these lines between the eyes. Don't redraw the lines between the eyes, but if you add those lines a little bit more, it's totally fine too. And when you're redrawing the tail ring lines, you can make them a little bit more rough, and you can redefine those lines based on where the paint landed. Let's use some squiggly lines, kind of make that tail a little bit fluffier, fuzzier. Or you can stick with the straight lines. And go through and redraw those lines. And this is a relaxing and meditative part of this painting. So just relax, put on some music, maybe a podcast or audiobook, or listen to nature, whatever makes things easiest and more relaxing for you. I'm redefining the lines for the nails. I like to go on the outside so that I preserve that bigger white space if needed. And when you're redrawing the eyes, just try to keep them pretty big, open, and wide. Round, make it cuter. Again, drawing on the outside of those white areas to preserve the white space. There's a little dot in the center, and then the sides a little bit. So center, and the kind of a triangle. Kind of draw that eye dot. Next, go and use the 01 black micron to retrace the scientific name, re-outline the common name, and then thicken some lines, including inside the ears, the inner eye if needed, the outer eye line, outer face lines, and the muzzle, and the inner line of the white face areas here. And the outline of the tail. Next, I'm going to use the 08 micron. It's the thickest of the black microns. I'm just going to thicken some lines throughout, and including filling in this nose. So I'm going to use a little dot method, just kind of dabbing my pen in there to fill in the top part of the nose so that it preserves some of that lighter color. And I'm going to add in this nose area, the lines, and then I'm going to kind of draw around them, leaving some of that light as well. So preserving some of that color there. And then I'll fill in between to darken that up and outline it. Then it preserves a little bit of that light color on the nose. Using the thick black lines sparingly help your image pop a little bit, even though we only use a little bit of paint. Some ink lines and give it a little bit of dimension. So on the nails, I only used it on parts of the nails and parts of the tail here, and not the entire head, just part of the head. So adds a little bit of some light and dark areas, making it pop off the page a little bit more. And every time I paint, it just ends up a little bit different. I did base my lines on my Red Panda final reference image. Last thing, I'm going to fill in this common name. And I'm going to do something a little different, not something we usually do with these lessons, but something you could do when you're sketching is take this white Prismacolor pencil. So colored pencil came with your kit. And I'm just going to trace right over all of those whiskers. And these whiskers, if you need a sharper tip, go ahead and sharpen it in the pencil sharpener. But these whiskers are white, so instead of working really hard to preserve that white space, we're just going to make it easy and fast. So that's what sketching, Nature Sketch Create is about. It's easy, quick, and relaxing. So we're just easy and fast to trace right over those whiskers to make them white. And now we're done. Great job, and keep practicing. Thanks for joining me. I hope you had fun, had a chance to relax a little. Next, you have some options what to do with this painting. You can punch holes in it, add it to your sketchbook, gift it, frame it, and display it around your house, send it in the mail to a friend regarding their day. Also, make sure to share it on our Facebook fan art page and use that hashtag NatureCreateArt to have it shared on our social media. If you have any questions or would like to see a plant or animal featured in a future lesson, please let me know in the comments below. Again, thank you for joining me. Make sure to check out naturesketchcrate.com to shop for lesson crates. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel.